back to Pyrography for beginners and beyond. Neil from Flames Pyro Art here with you again. We're going to start this new project with Captain America. I've just put the little picture that I made up. I just got a few bits and pieces and put them together in a collage. I'm going to change the words because I don't really like the words that I used. I tried to find some sayings from Captain America, but I don't really like what it's saying there, so I'm going to change them. So I laid my transfer out with my homemade piece of graphite paper, which came out like this. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. It's a little maybe dim for you, but we shall see. I'm just going to try and set the camera right for us, because what we're going to look at first today is blending, which is something I wanted to talk about a little with maybe the new pyrographers, shall we say, that might wonder what blending actually is. So we're going to have a little look just at this shield today for some blending, and I'm going to start on this, so this blue circular area, which obviously we're not going to do in blue because we work in sepia or sepia, however you want to pronounce it. So I'm using the large round shader. I've got my heat setting at 3 and I'm going to start shading. Now with blending, what blending is say if you were working a really dark shaded area. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing up here. Let me move myself along. You don't want to go like, unless you want to show a hole in something, you don't want to go dark to nothing. You know, you want to gradually blend the shading out from darker to lighter. And how we do that is by layering over and over. So on this particular shield, I'm going to make it so it's looks like it's, doming back. So if you think about that, the top bit round this star area would be the lightest, wouldn't it? And then this outer ring where it's arched away would be darker. So we can have a little explore at some of that today. Let me just turn this heat up a little touch so we can maybe move a little faster. Remember, when you keep your pen down on the wood more, you don't build that heat up into the pen, and you find you can, like paint away, if you like. You can paint with your pyrography pens. You're not going to cause massive dark patches as long as you've not got your heat cranked up to a ridiculous level where your pen's glowing red, which some pyrographers do work that way. I personally don't. I just like to enjoy what I'm doing. You could use a medium space shader. I may end up switching to the medium space shader with this because you get a tighter point on a medium space shader. But I just wanted to try and hopefully show you a little bit of blending, because this middle area also would be shaped, wouldn't it, if it was dome-like? So think again about, the shape of the object. If we were to just do our shading strokes that way or upwards, we would lose, the shape we're trying to create. We're trying to create like sort of like a bowl shape, aren't we? A upside down bowl. And if we think down here, behind Captain America's arm, that is going to be a dark area, because Captain America is going to be shadowing this, and we want this to look like it is sat further behind Captain America's arm here. So this will be darker than the arm itself, like considerably, but that will be later on in the piece when I start setting full tones. But when you first start with pyrography, you know, shading and blending are all these new techniques to you, and you may struggle a little, because you may be lifting your pen off, say, too much, and then you're building too much heat into your pen. You may have your pen settings way too high. A lot of pyrographers will work, when we're doing things like this, maybe around like the 3 to 4 heat setting level on our Optimas, which is like a low medium heat, because we want to gradually build our way to the shading tone. We want to blend, from darker to a little bit lighter to lighter to lighter. And you think when we go down the point of this star, let's say if the star is like slightly raised, it's like a fancy, a metal sticking out star, then there's going to be a point, isn't there, down the edge where it's going to be darker to show that star is raised up. Sorry, that inhaling you hear is me. I'm a vapour. I do apologise. I do like to vape while I'm working. So we can see with blending techniques, just pen down, just run it all the way along with it down on the wood permanently, and gradually, because when you're starting off at this point, so the most heat is at the start point, and by the time you get to the end of the stroke, most of the heat has been sucked out of the pen, if you like. Where you first touch down will be your darkest, and as you gradually move yourself around, it will get lighter and lighter, the stroke, and that is what we call blending. And it's very much a patience exercise, is blending. It's not something you're going to do an amazing piece of art in an hour or so. It's just, well, for me, that doesn't happen. It can take me maybe a week or more, depending on how deep a level of detail I want to go into, which I always end up finding myself going into ridiculous levels of detail. Most people won't even recognise the detail that you've gone into when they look at your piece of work, but you know what you've put into it. So it's all about your own journey, isn't it? Your own pleasure, your own passion. And pyrography is very much a passion of mine. So I want to try and create some sort of shine on this middle area. So as I get towards the point where I want to show that there's a shiny area, that wants to be lighter. don't know whether to switch to my medium space shader now. I think I will actually. If you just give me a second, I'm just going to switch pen to the medium space shader. This used to be my favourite pen. It was my stock pen. It's a medium space shader. So versatile, you can do so much with it. It's got a lovely point on the end where you can get into very tight spaces. You can even get extra small space shaders, so you can get into even tighter gaps. I know certainly Pat at the Optima has got some great like micro skews and extra small space shaders for really intricate work. So you can buy that sort of thing. You know, because the starter kits don't have a great range of pens, do they? And they're all a bit, well, a lot of them are like wire, aren't they? Wire loops are not like, you know, this looks like an iron, doesn't it? But remember, each pen, because of the surface area of the pen, the heat setting may be different. I've turned my unit down to heat setting 3 now to begin with, to see what shade stroke I'm getting at heat setting 3. Because if it would have been up at 4 with this pen, it would have probably been too hot. What I want to do, I want to raise the, like this star as a buckle. So down here on the edge of the point of the star would be the dark area to signify that this star is sitting up. But then if we want to make like like an inverted bowl, this star would also be curving, wouldn't it? So that's another consideration. Do I make it into like a shield like that? Then I have to think about this star and the shaping and the shading of the star. All these things will just sort of evolve in my, letting my creative mind over the time spent working on the piece. Oh, you've got me in good camera view and my hand isn't in the way. I can't see the camera that I'm using because I've got it in a special tripod over the work, because I like to try and actually show you live what I'm doing instead of a time-lapse video, which is just at ridiculous speed, and really you don't learn anything, do you, from watching a time-lapse video, because the person's hand is going that fast. So now I'm going to turn the board the other way up, because I want to get at this side. And if I was the other way round, any excess heat was going in the wrong direction. I couldn't get the direction I wanted, which I want to be flowing in this direction, you know, on the angle. So moving your board around, working upside down, is a skill that you will acquire just through practice. In the end, it'll just be like working, you know, normal side up. It won't be a problem to you at all. And hopefully you'll see when with the blending of this in a minute how it'll be more like seamless. You know, the stroke will gradually go along. It won't be like blotchy or patchy. is a bit of graphite laid down there that we need to rub off, but I can get that in a minute. I just want to get the main shape down. I'm going to move my board again for a second. Hopefully you still see me, because I want to get up to this star. So I mean, with the medium space shade, I'm using the very tip of it now, and I can get such a fine line. And I don't want to go crazy at this point because I haven't made my mind up exactly what shade I want to set at. So I've just put a line there just to get my points in, and then if I can find my trusty rubber, which I can, let's get this graphite off here. When you use your own homemade graphite paper, it does lay a bit of graphite all over the whole sheet of wood that you've used to transfer, especially with a fresh piece of graphite paper. It will. See, now my pen's been left for a minute, so it's going to be darker. So I'm going to go to a spot where I know can touch down and it's a darker area, so I'm not damaging the lighter areas. Yeah, the more worn in your piece of homemade graphite paper gets, the better it is. When you make a fresh piece, you lay down a lot of graphite, but it's a cheap, inexpensive way to make your graphite paper, your transfer paper, and it lasts you a long time. So if you don't do that currently, I would suggest looking into buying yourself a B grade graphite stick, and all you need is an A4 piece of printer paper, and you can make yourself a piece of transfer paper that does rub out quite easily. So you can see with the blending process, you're layering up to find those tones. I'm not sure if it's going to be a flat shield yet or a rounded one because of this star in the middle. It's giving me second thoughts on the shape I was going to make this shield, but I'll have to have a think about that. I know people in my Facebook group, you know, when they first start pyrography, they say they struggle with shading. And it's purely just technique. Turn your heat down, turn it right down when you're first starting. The common mistake a lot of new pyrographers make is they have the heat setting way too high. So you can't shade and blend because your heat's just too hot. You just can't. You can't manage it. It gets out of control. You want the heat always fully under your control. You dictate, you know, what shade is going into the wood. And I say into the wood because, as you all know, I always say it's a lot like tattoo art, in that we're not just burning the surface of the wood, we're actually penetrating the heat deeper into the wood, and that's what gives the more 3D pop effect, soaking that heat deeper down into the wood. So as soon as I can, because I've got my heat setting on a controlled level, I can confidently scribble away. And blend my shape in. I want to move round again for a second because I want to get on this angle. Make sure I've still got you in camera. I'm going to have to lay some tape out so I know exactly where the camera is pointing, because I do like to try and zoom in on the tutorial videos so you can actually see up close and not from a distance what is actually going on. Let's move that back around again. Where we at? There. Because this central area is where we're going to leave like a sheen, a highlight on the shield. So it's going to run all the way out there. But so if we are going to dome effect the shield, we would have to go from this point and gradually go darker and darker to give the effect of it falling away. The darker the tone you put down next to a light, let's say this one's lighter and I go darker this side, it will look like it is a level down from this. So the darker steps that you blend, you know, so the it's not just like light and then doof, really dark, otherwise it looks like you've just dropped off at the edge of a cliff. So you need to subtly blend them shading tones, and the way you do that is by layering. I know this video today may be a bit of a not the most interesting video, but it's a good video for new pyrographers to understand the concept of shading and maybe some of the things they're doing wrong. You know, why am I struggling to shade? Another word I like to call pyrography is patienceography. And if you get to a level where you really love your pyrography, you know, you'll really take your time and you'll get yourself engrossed, and you'll find it a pleasurable experience. See here on this little area, it's only ever so small an area, but I need to blend my shading tone. We don't want it to look blotchy. I'm not using the pen flat either. I'm using 3/4 tip, sometimes quarter tip of the pen. When I'm shading, like say on this angle, I'm using more of the side of the pen. I'm not flat, I've got it tilted on an angle. So we utilise the edges more than the actual flat. The flat is for, say, if you're dark shade in a huge area. But we very seldom use our pens flat, we're always on an angle. And eventually it will just become an extension of your hand, and you'll be able to become so proficient at exactly where you're touching down that it will become so much easier for you. And always keep those early pieces of art that you did and look back in, say, 6 months, 3 months even, and you will see, wow, look at the difference from what I did 3 months ago to what I did today. Quite a lot of the early work I did was shocking. When I look back at it now, I cringe, but I suppose it was all part of my learning process, so I can see how I've developed. There's a little area there that's blotchy. So you can see I'm creeping up to put that sheen in. I'm going to turn the board again. There's a lot of board turning with pyrography, so we can get easily at the right angle, depending on what handed you are. I'm right-handed, so this side I struggle with. I need to turn the board upside down to get at. And just stay within your border line, you know, your graphite line, just stay a fraction away from it. For now, you know, those borders are there for a reason, because they're different colours, so they're going to be different shades. And I'm always working on the angle of the shape. While I'm touching down quite quickly, I can shade this area up a bit around where the highlight is. And I can make this dome as deep a dome as I possibly wanted to by simply, the darker I went on the outside edge here, if I started there and I went darker, 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 I could make this look like, you know, almost like a glass just dropping down. But I don't want to go that deep, obviously. But you know, the darker you go, the deeper you can make your work look. So if you're doing spirals, you can make a spiral going deeper and deeper, and it'll look like it was actually going into the wood, you know. Wouldn't look like it was on the surface, it'd look like it was actually going deep. It's crazy some of the things you can do when you get your shading strokes perfectly. We're not going to go on for too much longer with this blending video, because I think blending is not a subject you need to talk about too much. I think even by now you've all got the gist of what blending is. Gradually just changing that tone. Unless you're doing a hard drop, it's always a gradual, like, you know, just ever so slightly changing the shade. This area here will be a hard drop just on the very edge, because I want Captain America to be front and forward from this shield. And there'll be some great opportunities to show you some things as this piece progresses. So I think that pretty much covers what blending is and what shading is and how it's done. Keep that heat turned down, don't get too high, and just layer your way to the heat, to the, you know, the shading tone you want. Just gradually just build your way there, and that's the best way to practice. That's the way I always learned, was having my heat low. I mean, say a piece like this in the old days would have took me maybe a month, because my heat setting was so low as I was searching out, you know, those perfect tones, because I was new to art, and, you know, I had no experience in it, so it took me a lot longer to find the shading tones. Hopefully, as I've got better with understanding shading and how it works, I can work a bit faster these days. But just all comes with experience, guys. So, as I always say, there's no prizes for finishing first, you know, finishing quickest. It's quality, not quantity. Okay, so we shall leave blending there, and hopefully you can see there's a highlight going to form, and I'm going to form it all the way out. I may put a bit of time lapse on so you can see this highlight moving out, because I'm not going to make you sit through me doing a full shield of like where the sun's bouncing off there or the light is bouncing off there. So I'll probably switch that to time lapse and you can just see it forming. But we've discussed all we needed to discuss today. Okay, so happy pyroing, everybody. If you do want this pattern to have a go at this yourself with me, you're more than welcome. Just pop me a comment and I'll tell you how you can get in touch with me, or find me on the Facebook group, which is Pyrography for Beginners and Beyond by Flames Pyro Art. Just agree to our rules and we just ask you a couple of questions so we don't get the spammers in the group, and you can contact me very easily that way. you know, I'm always more than happy to chat pyro with people because it's a passion. So you can always contact me. Okay, take care everybody. Have a great day and have a great week. Lots of love to you all.